Every family dinner was torture, knowing the love I craved sat just across the table. The dining room was always too bright, the chandelier casting golden light on the polished oak table. Every night, my parents hosted these suffocating dinners, business associates, family friends, and worst of all, him. Noah Sinclair. My stepbrother. He wasn't my blood, but that didn't make my feelings any less forbidden. He sat across from me, laughing at one of my father's dry jokes, his dark eyes glancing toward me, but never for too long. We had perfected the art of pretending I didn't stare too long when he walked into a room. Pretending I didn't feel my heart tighten every time he ignored me. Pretending I didn't dream about him at night. I hated him for making it look easy. Because for me, every second at this table was agony. And tonight was no different. As I pushed my food around my plate, my father's voice cut through the air. "Damian, I don't see why you can't be more like Noah." I flinched. I hated when he did that. Compared me. Held up Noah like some golden standard I could never reach. Noah, the perfect son. Noah, the business prodigy. Noah, the one my father actually wanted. "Because I'm not him," I muttered under my breath. Noah's eyes flickered to me, something unreadable behind them. But he didn't defend me. He never did. And maybe that hurt the most. I had told myself I could handle this. That I could survive being near Noah without letting it destroy me. I was wrong. Because later that night, when I passed by his bedroom door, I heard her laugh. Soft. Feminine. Intimate. A girl. My heart clenched. I shouldn't have stopped, shouldn't have let my jealousy get the best of me. But I did. Through the small gap in the door, I saw them, Noah leaning against his desk, a blonde girl wrapped around him. Her hands on his chest. His fingers brushing her waist. I couldn't breathe. I turned away too fast, knocking into the hallway table. A sharp thud echoed through the quiet corridor. The voices inside the room stopped. Shit. The door swung open, and suddenly, Noah was standing in front of me. His gaze locked onto mine, his expression unreadable. "Damian," he said, voice low. I didn't wait. I turned and walked away. And this time, I wasn't pretending. I hated him. Avoiding Noah was impossible. He was everywhere, at breakfast, at the gym, in the car when my father insisted we ride together. But the worst part? He didn't act like anything had changed. Like I hadn't caught him with her. Like I hadn't spent the whole night trying to erase the image from my mind. And maybe that was the cruelest part. Because if it had been me in that room, if Noah had caught me with someone else, I wanted to know if it would have hurt him the way it hurt me. So I did something reckless. The next time my father hosted a party, I found someone. Someone who wasn't Noah. A guy with dark curls and easy charm. Adrian. He smiled at me, and I smiled back. And I knew Noah was watching. I wanted him to watch. So when Adrian pulled me onto the dance floor, his hands on my hips, I leaned into him. And when he whispered something against my ear, I laughed just a little too loud. It was a game. A dangerous one. But I didn't care. Because when I finally looked up, Noah's jaw was clenched, his eyes dark with something that almost looked like jealousy. For the first time, he looked like he felt something. And that was all the encouragement I needed. I had barely made it upstairs when Noah caught me. His grip on my wrist was tight, his body too close. "What the hell was that?" he hissed. I yanked my arm free. "What do you mean?" His eyes flashed. "You know what I mean." I smirked, even though my heart was racing. "You didn't seem to care when you had someone in your room." His jaw tightened. "That's different." I laughed bitterly. "How?" His hands curled into fists at his sides. He looked like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. And I was done waiting. So I stepped closer, my voice dropping. Why do you care, Noah? If it doesn't matter, if I don't matter, then why are you this angry? He didn't answer. Because we both knew the truth. This wasn't anger. It was something else. Something dangerous. Something forbidden. It happened fast. 1 second, we were glaring at each other. The next, his lips were on mine. It wasn't soft. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate. Messy. Furious. I kissed him back, gripping his shirt, pulling him closer, letting every ounce of frustration, jealousy, and pain melt into this moment. Because for once, Noah wasn't pretending. And neither was I. But reality hit fast. Noah pulled away like he had been burned, his breath ragged. His eyes were wide, panicked. This can't happen, he whispered. My chest ached. Why not? His face twisted, torn between a million emotions. Because I don't know how to want you without ruining everything. His words felt like a slap. Before I could respond, he turned and walked away. And this time, it was me who was left behind. The days after the kiss were unbearable. Noah avoided me. No more stolen glances. No more tense silence. Just distance. And that hurt more than anything. One night, I found him by the lake behind our house. He was sitting on the dock, staring at the water, his expression unreadable. I sat beside him. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then, finally, I said, "You can push me away all you want, but it won't change the fact that this is real." Noah exhaled sharply. "Damian. I love you." He froze. I had never said it out loud before. Never dared. He turned to me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't name. Then, after what felt like forever, he whispered, "I love you too." My heart stopped. But that doesn't mean we can have this. I swallowed hard. Why not? He closed his eyes. Because love like this? It destroys everything in its path. And maybe he was right. But as I reached for his hand, fingers lacing through his, I knew one thing for sure. I would rather be ruined by him than live a life without him. And for now, that was enough. The world outside our house didn't know what we were. To everyone else, we were just stepbrothers, connected by marriage, forced to coexist in the same family. But in the quiet moments, when no one was watching, we were something else entirely. Something dangerous. Something we couldn't escape. And neither of us wanted to. It started small. Brushing hands when no one was looking. Lingering in doorways just a little too long. Late-night texts that turned into hours of whispered conversations. Then came the nights we couldn't help ourselves. The first time I snuck into his room, I told myself it was just a talk. But when I closed the door behind me, and Noah looked up from his bed, I saw it in his eyes. He needed me just as much as I needed him. I didn't hesitate. I crawled onto the bed beside him, my fingers trembling as they trailed up his arm. "Damian," he whispered. I silenced him with a kiss. This time, he didn't pull away. The more time we spent together, the harder it became to pretend. We found excuses to be alone. Noah would claim he had errands to run, and I would just happen to tag along. We would sit in the car, parked in some quiet spot outside the city, talking for hours. Some days, we didn't talk at all. Some days, he would just reach for me, and I would melt into him, letting his lips erase all the fear, all the doubt. It was reckless. It was doomed. But it was ours. The first time we left town together, it was Noah's idea. "Let's just go," he said one night, lying beside me, his fingers playing with mine. "Just for the weekend." I hesitated. "And if someone finds out?" His lips brushed against my jaw. "Then we make up an excuse." Like we always do. So we went. A small cabin in the woods. No expectations. No pressure. Just us. The first night, we sat by the fireplace, drinking cheap whiskey, laughing over nothing. Then, as the fire burned low, Noah reached for my hand. "I don't want to hide this forever," he admitted. I swallowed hard. "Me neither." His fingers tightened around mine. "Then let's not." He kissed me, slow and deep, and I let myself believe, for just one night, that maybe we didn't have to be a secret. That maybe, somehow, we could have this forever. That night, something changed. We weren't just sneaking kisses in the dark. We weren't just holding hands when no one was watching. We were letting go. Completely. Noah's hands were all over me, tangled in my hair, sliding down my back, gripping my waist like he would never let go. I gasped against his lips as he pulled me closer, pressing me into the mattress. "Tell me to stop," he whispered, his breath hot against my skin. I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I pulled him down and let myself fall apart beneath him. And when it was over, when we lay tangled in the sheets, his body warm against mine, I knew there was no turning back. We had crossed the line. And neither of us wanted to go back. Sneaking around became harder after that weekend. The stolen glances weren't enough. The brief touches felt like torture. We wanted more. Needed more. One evening, we found ourselves alone in the library. My parents were hosting another dinner, guests crowding the house. Noah grabbed my wrist and pulled me into the shadows between the bookshelves. I barely had time to react before his lips were on mine. It was reckless. A single noise, and we'd be caught. But that was what made it exhilarating. I pressed into him, fingers tangling in his hair, feeling him shudder against me. "Damian," he groaned, his voice barely a whisper. "We can't keep doing this." I kissed him harder. "Then stop me." He didn't. Secrets don't stay hidden forever. One night, my father walked into the house earlier than expected. And I made the mistake of not locking the door. Noah and I were tangled together on the couch, lost in each other, when the door slammed open. My father's voice was like a gunshot. "What the hell is going on here?" We jolted apart. Noah scrambled off me, looking pale. I felt my stomach drop. My father's face was red with fury. His hands clenched into fists. He didn't need to ask. He knew. "Get up," he ordered, his voice shaking. Noah obeyed immediately, his head lowered. My father turned to me, his eyes burning with disappointment. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I did. I had ruined everything. And this time, there was no way to fix it. The fallout was brutal. My father sent Noah away. He made sure we had no contact, blocked my calls, forced me to stay home, surrounded me with people who watched my every move. It was hell. Every day without Noah felt like a knife twisting in my chest. But the worst part, I didn't know if he was fighting for us too. Or if he had already given up. Months passed. I tried to move on. Tried to forget. But love like this doesn't just disappear. And then, one night, my phone buzzed. A single message. "Meet me where it all started." My heart pounded. I knew exactly where that was. The lake behind our house. Where we had whispered our first confessions. Where he had first kissed me. Where I had first realized I was his, completely and irreversibly. I ran. And when I saw him standing there, waiting, I knew. Nothing, not time, not distance, not even our family, could keep us apart. This love was forbidden. But it was ours. And we weren't giving it up. Not now. Not ever. The moment I saw Noah standing by the lake, I knew I was done pretending. I didn't care what my father thought. I didn't care about the consequences. All I cared about was him. I rushed forward, my breath hitching. Noah. He pulled me into his arms before I could say anything else. His grip was desperate, fingers digging into my back like he was afraid I'd disappear. You came, he whispered against my hair. Of course I did. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. We knew we couldn't stay. Not here. Not where eyes were always watching. We have to leave, Noah said, gripping my hands. Tonight. I hesitated. Leave and go where? Anywhere. Somewhere we can just be us. It was reckless. It was insane. But looking into his eyes, I knew, there was no life for me without him. Okay, I whispered. And just like that, our fate was sealed. We didn't leave right away. For one night, we let ourselves exist in the moment. We found an old motel on the outskirts of town. No one knew us there. For the first time, we weren't stepbrothers. We were just two people in love. In the dim light of the motel room, Noah traced his fingers over my skin, memorizing every inch of me. Damian, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. You're everything to me. I pulled him closer, pressing my forehead against his. Then don't let me go. That night, we didn't hold back. There were no more secrets, no more fear. Just us. Loving each other the way we were always meant to. We left before sunrise. No goodbyes. No explanations. Just a car, the open road, and a promise, we would make this work. We had nothing but each other. And that was enough. Or so we thought. We didn't make it far before reality caught up with us. My father had connections. Power. He wouldn't let me go without a fight. One night, while stopping for gas, I saw it. A black car parked at the edge of the lot. Watching. Waiting. They found us, I whispered, my heart pounding. Noah cursed under his breath. We have to keep moving. But deep down, we both knew. We couldn't run forever. They caught us in a small town miles away from home. My father didn't come himself. But his men did. No more games, one of them said, grabbing my arm. You're coming home. Noah stepped between us, his jaw clenched. He's not going anywhere. The tension crackled like a storm. Then, a cold voice cut through the air. Enough. We turned. And there he was. My father. Standing there like a king reclaiming what was his. You've had your fun, my father said, his voice eerily calm. But it ends now. I knew what he meant. This wasn't just about running away. It was about us. About what we were. I swallowed hard. You can't control who I love. His eyes darkened. Watch me. My hands trembled. I turned to Noah. I won't leave you. But my father just smirked. You think you have a choice. They gave me an ultimatum. Come home, or ruin Noah's life. They had the power to destroy him, his career, his reputation, everything. And I knew my father would do it without hesitation. Noah grabbed my hand. Don't listen to him. But I saw the truth in his eyes. If I didn't do this, they'd make him suffer. I took a shaky breath. Then, with all the strength I had left, I whispered. I'll go. Noah froze. Damian, no. But it was too late. I had already surrendered. To save him, I had to lose him. They dragged me home. I wasn't locked away, but I might as well have been. No phone. No internet. No Noah. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And slowly, I began to break. Until one night. A knock at my window. My heart stopped. I turned. And there he was. Noah. Did you really think I'd let you go that easily? He whispered. Tears burned in my eyes. You shouldn't be here. He climbed through the window, his hands cupping my face. Neither should you. And in that moment, I knew. We would never be over. We couldn't keep running. This time, we had to fight. For each other. For the love they tried to tear apart. So we made a plan. One last stand against my father. One last chance to claim our freedom. And this time, we weren't backing down. The night was dark and tense as we returned to the estate, the place that had long been our prison. Every step we took felt heavy with the weight of our past and the promise of a future we were fighting for. Noah's hand gripped mine tightly as we navigated the familiar corridors, our hearts pounding in unison. In the grand foyer, the silence was shattered by the sound of heavy footsteps. My father's men had gathered, their eyes cold and determined. In the center of the room, my father stood like a statue of authority, his face set in a mask of finality. You should have stayed away, he growled, his voice echoing off the marble walls. Noah stepped forward, his eyes blazing with defiance. I'm not leaving you behind, he declared. His voice trembled with both anger and determination, and in that moment, I knew we were ready to fight for our freedom together. A struggle erupted. Shouts, the clatter of fists against flesh, and the pounding of feet on polished floors filled the space. I found myself fighting desperately, not just for my own life but for every stolen moment we'd shared, every whisper of hope that had led us to this final stand. In the midst of the chaos, Noah and I managed to break free from the circle of enforcers. We sprinted down the corridor, every turn bringing us closer to an uncertain future, yet together, we dared to dream of a life unbound by our past. Outside, under a cold, indifferent sky, we stumbled into a hidden garden behind the estate. Bruised and breathless, we collapsed against the stone wall, holding each other as if our lives depended on it. Noah, I gasped, my voice a mixture of pain and relief. He looked at me, his dark eyes filled with unspoken promises. In the quiet of that moment, with adrenaline slowly ebbing away, he whispered, I will never let you go, Damian. Even if it costs me everything. As if on cue, headlights cut through the darkness, a car arrived, its engine humming ominously. The sound signaled that my father was not yet finished. From the shadows, he emerged, his expression a blend of regret and steely resolve. I never wanted it to be this way, he said, almost to himself, before turning his gaze upon us. But you have left me no choice. Time seemed to slow as he stepped forward. In that fraught moment, I realized the truth. Our battle was not only against the enforcers of an oppressive legacy but also against the man who had molded our fate. In a surge of defiance and desperation, Noah stepped between my father and me. Damian, run, he shouted. But I couldn't leave him to face the wrath alone. My father's eyes softened for just an instant, as if remembering a time before bitterness overtook him. Noah, please, he began, but the words were lost in the roar of our hearts. Before I knew it, Noah lunged forward, taking the brunt of a blow meant for me. I caught him as he fell, his body trembling against mine. The sacrifice was sudden and excruciating, a revelation that the cost of our forbidden love was higher than we ever imagined. In the days that followed, the estate was cast into chaos. My father's anger had spiraled into a final confrontation with his own demons, and his men, once so fearsome, began to lose their grip. Amid the turmoil, Noah lay in a hospital bed, his body fragile yet his spirit burning bright with the determination to survive. I spent countless hours by his side, our hands entwined, whispering promises of a shared future even as the scars of our battle ran deep. Every touch was a reminder of what we had endured, and every tear a silent vow to never let our love be extinguished by those who sought to control us. During a long, sleepless night, as I held Noah close and watched the steady rise and fall of his chest, I finally understood, our love was a rebellion, a defiant act against the constraints of a world that had always tried to tear us apart. And though the cost had been immense, that sacrifice had set us free. In the heart of our pain, a new clarity emerged. Our future was ours to write, unburdened by the legacy of hatred and control. Months later, the scars of our past were still visible, but they had become symbols of our resilience. With the support of a few steadfast allies, those who believed that love should never be a crime, we built a life away from the oppressive reach of our families. Noah and I found solace in a small coastal town, where the gentle lull of the ocean reminded us that every tide brought the promise of renewal. We rented a modest apartment overlooking the sea, a place where secrets were no longer currency and every sunrise brought the hope of a new beginning. Together, we forged a routine that was simple yet profound. Mornings were spent walking along the beach, hands locked in quiet solidarity. Afternoons were for quiet moments of intimacy, reading, and dreaming aloud of a future where our past was nothing more than a memory. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, we would sit on our worn-out balcony. Noah's head on my shoulder, my fingers tracing the lines of his hand, and in those moments, the pain of yesterday faded into the gentle embrace of tomorrow. Years have passed since that fateful night of rebellion and sacrifice. The echoes of our struggle still linger like distant memories, but they no longer define us. Instead, they serve as reminders of the strength it took to claim our right to love, a right that once seemed forbidden but is now our guiding light. Noah and I have learned that love, no matter how forbidden or fraught with obstacles, is worth every tear and every battle. We have built a life of our own, where trust, passion, and resilience formed the foundation of our bond. Sitting together on our balcony one crisp autumn evening, we watched as the leaves danced in the wind. Noah rested his head against my shoulder and murmured, "We did it, Damian. We finally broke free." I squeezed his hand and replied, "Our love has always been our greatest strength." In the gentle glow of the setting sun, with the whispers of the past finally at peace, we embraced the promise of a future chosen by us, a future where our hearts would forever be entwined, beyond the reach of anyone who dared to challenge it.